Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Great. All right, could I get everybody to kind of stand up, loosen up a little bit here? Some of you know where this is going. There you go. All right, and let's see. If you've got a birthday on an odd number day, 1, 3, 5. This isn't a FUBAR test. Odd number days, hold your arms out, straight out, facing each other. And if you have a birthday on an even number day, put your hands together. All right. Good. Now I get to tell my wife I got a standing ovation. Have a seat. She is so sick of that joke. Just I can hear the eye rolls through the text, but it makes me happy. Perfect. Our talk here, it's the end of Agile as we know it, and I feel fine. My name is Dustin Thorstensen. I see that the edits I made on my other laptop didn't transfer over here, but that's okay. I'm really happy to be back in Detroit. I've been coming to Agile and Beyond for, I think, 4 years now. Eric remembers, I think my first time here, I was interviewing with a company, and Eric came out of a meeting with that company. He goes, "You're interviewing with us?" I told him to hire you. So I actually got to work for a local company here in Detroit for about 3 years. COVID interrupted that. And that was a real pain because I didn't get a chance to, I couldn't keep going to get all the good food at Dearborn. I loved it. So I flew in on Sunday night. I worked in the hotel on Monday, and I had them deliver some Himalayan flames. Anybody have Himalayan flames? Oh, so good. So good. So good. But yeah, so my background, my background is in software development. I've been doing that for about 25 years. And I've also done some coaching. My personal mantra is understand, be understood. So I'm telling you this because my first goal is to understand you. If you have a question and I start responding and I misinterpreted, I would really like you to say, "Hey, dummy, stop. I actually meant this." And then my goal to be understood, hopefully, is to try to make things clear. And hopefully I can do that with this. All right, so is this another Agile is Dead talk? No. This is not a doom and gloom talk. But it is a talk that's kind of addressing a lot of the things that have happened in our industry lately. And my hope is that we don't just sit here and poo-poo on Agile and say the experiment failed. Hopefully after this session, my goal is that you're able to kind of walk out here feeling energized, maybe have some fresh ideas on what to look at next. And hopefully I've got a couple of spots where we're using Menti. You'll see a big QR code up there. Anybody ever used Menti before, Mentimeter? Perfect. So I'm hoping that you all have an opportunity to share in some of your experiences and observations. I'll be asking questions like, how have you seen Agile fail? And I'll also be asking questions about what are some things that you've seen that work well. So hopefully we can all kind of collaborate on that and, let the team build us up a little bit more. While building this talk, we're going to have 3 phases. The first phase is to talk about how did we get here. Second phase is kind of reflecting on what we learned. And then the third phase is going to be, what are we going to do next? If you see anything in here which might be factually incorrect, I'll apologize ahead of time. If you see anything that I have put up here which looks blatantly plagiarized, it is an honest mistake. I'm not intentionally trying to copy and paste anybody else's work. I don't think that a whole lot of my ideas are really my ideas. They've been heavily influenced by other people. I've been very fortunate to learn from some great folks along the way. So, yeah. All right, so the first thing, we've got a big bang. How did we get here? So we'll go through 7 different phases here. Anybody alive in the 70s and 80s? Upper V? All right, so obviously we've got waterfall, right? This all started with waterfall. Very logical. Made a lot of sense. Friedrich Taylor, Henry Ford, 100 years ago, they did a lot of very specific planning. They did a lot of local optimization. If you put the wheel on perfectly, and you put the stereo on perfectly, if you do all those little things perfectly, you get an assembly line, and all those little parts add up to a greater good. So they figured, let's just plan everything out, and that way we can reduce all the risk and we can have a perfect plan. I did see something just a couple weeks ago, follow-up works from Gantt. What's his first name? I don't even know. Gary? Gary Gantt. Where Gary Gantt was working with Friedrich Taylor, Taylorism, scientific management. Even later, he had admitted, yeah, that whole Gantt chart thing didn't work out. Good in theory, but it was too late. It was embedded in our MBAs, and that's what we all thought. So along that time, we also had W.E. Demings, who's from Iowa. Anybody Iowa? Quality management. He goes into Toyota, goes into Japan after World War II, and they're thinking, we need to have a manufacturing base, but we can't compete like Ford and GM does with efficiencies of scale. We don't have that volume. So he started focusing on how quality, introducing quality at each step, can actually reduce a lot of waste and give you a better product. So a lot of the work that he had done back then really kind of permeates through what we're doing today. Did you know that a long time ago paired programming was invented? This is not a new thing. I think Fred Brooks might have discovered it 70s or 50s, a long time ago. Right? So it's like we have all these ideas that have started to kind of build up. All of a sudden the 90s come around. They're discovering the way we're doing things isn't working. Rapid application development, you started seeing different approaches in tooling in the way that we would build applications, because these long, expensive timelines to find out something didn't work was really expensive, bad ROI. Chrysler C3 project here in Detroit, they brought in a bunch of people and they said, the way we build software sucks. We're not worried about you just delivering a product. We want you to find out how software works. I've got a few people on here. One that I haven't mentioned, Chet Hendrickson. If you're interested, I actually interviewed him for a user group I run back in Des Moines, and it was really fun listening to him talk about how they got together and they said, how does this make sense? What if we were all in the same room together? What if we actually worked on the problem at the same time? What if we didn't have carpet floors, so our chairs could just scoot on over? What if every time we ordered bacon pizza, it's automatically double bacon? True story. They did a bunch of these different types of things. They just experimented and said, what if, what if, what if? What if we wrote tests? What if we operated differently? What if we got together every day? And that kind of was a major thing that led up to the Agile Manifesto. Anybody heard of that? Good, nothing breaking here. And then I'm only listing a couple people. There were plenty other people that were there in Snowbird. But, you get a bunch of folks that got together at a ski resort and they started talking. This sucks, it sucks, it sucks. They complained for several days, and finally at the end, they said, what can we agree upon? They came up with some values, some principles, and that really kind of started a very major change. One of the interesting things about the Agile Manifesto and Snowbird, a bunch of old white men there. Esther Derby, Linda Rising, Dan Larson. None of these people were invited, right? It was a very kind of select group. So we've got to take that with a grain of salt. Thankfully, as we've gone along, things have improved in that area. 2001, continuous integration. I was going to say Circle CI. What's the tool again? I forgot the tool. Not Jenkins. It was before Jenkins. Starts with a C. Cruise control. Thank you. Yeah. Matt was over at Object Mentor and created cruise control. So all of a sudden now it's like, hey, what if we don't have to integrate later on? What if we can get it done earlier? Early 2000s, things started to pick up. We get our Agile Alliance, our Scrum Alliance created. We got new tools, Jira and Rally. We started seeing an emphasis on our practices. Clean Code, Lean Software Development by Mary and Tom Popdike. Agile Retrospectives book was released in that time. This is all team-centric stuff, though. 2003 was about the first time that I got introduced into a Scrum team, and we literally did stand-ups in the closet. Had the whiteboard there with the sticky notes. People got together because it didn't really look good. You don't want the client walking by and seeing a bunch of people standing around with these messy sticky notes. So they put it in the closet. And the first part of my career, we were looking for companies that had a manager. There was a ceiling. We were trying to find how far up that ceiling can we go to find people that will support this way of working. Because we still had the business with their Gantt charts and their deadlines and zero risk, and we had to find places that would allow us to experiment and to learn. So people would kind of jump around different companies, and then you started to see a pattern forming. Various companies in town all of a sudden had these great teams, and people were really happy and starting to deliver some great work. Well, eventually that caught on. So then we start getting into the 2010s where this stuff started to expand beyond the team. Silicon Valley proved all this stuff works. You got your agile transformations, lean startup. People started thinking about what if we could have faster feedback? What if we could get product to our customers? What if we can pivot? We found better ways to work as developers technically. We got DevOps, let's start automating stuff, let's start making things more predictable. ATD, BDD, we've got this idea of what if we connect with our business users and can agree upon what we're trying to do in a common language. And then take that common language and have it executable. So if I'm sitting with a business person that doesn't know anything about technology, can I put some clear text here? And then if they change it, we can actually see if that will do anything to the code. Cool stuff. Lease actions. Now we've got coaching agile teams. We're starting to see this spread here of going beyond the team to departments and recognizing that people might need help. This was kind of a fun time because when I would talk to people and I would say something about Scrum, TDD, XP, it was the first time they heard it. So you got to explain to people what we're talking about here. And then actually SAFe started coming out because people were wondering, how do we scale? I got to work with Ryan in Des Moines. We were at one of the first companies that actually tried out SAFe. Dean Leffingwell was there. I think, is it the first?
It's the prototype. It wasn't even called SAFe.
Okay, yeah. And even at that point, what was interesting is we were trying things, but we continued to evolve. We kept trying different things. Different teams were doing different things. Started off where we had these big meetings in hotels, and then it just got to be this PI planning where people just kind of go around and do their own work. And as soon as we found a problem, somebody would go talk to another team, make sure we were in alignment. It's pretty effective. And then we get to the 2000s, right? It's blown up. And, sorry, the 2020s. And at this point, we're agiling all the things. Sales has to be agile, procurement, marketing, legal, HR. Actually, when we were at Deere, it was kind of cool. Even their maintenance department would have QR codes in the bathroom, and they would have daily stand-ups to talk about what they were doing, their Kanban boards. So all of a sudden, everything blew up. Everybody wanted Agile. And now today, Agile is dead. Capital One, January 2023, they laid off about 1,100 Agilists. Melissa this morning had talked around that same time frame. Since 2003, 282,000 people in technology have been let go. There was a big investment into becoming Agile, and now there is a very sharp pullback on funding. And I've been at a couple of companies where you see these overhead Agile transformations, And then when they start looking at that ROI, they're like, well, if the teams really like their coach, maybe they can fund it themselves. You know, the economy goes in waves, and it feels like for a little bit here, we've been expecting it to drop off. So companies are kind of, it appears to me that companies are in a make the money while you can phase. We're going to reduce expenses. We're going to try to maximize profits as long as people can still afford to buy our products and move forward. So what did we all learn from this? We have learned a lot of things, and we'll go through them, but you know, we learned some basic things. People matter. Teams matter. Culture matters. Delivery matters. We've also learned a lot of things about what don't work really well, especially with some of these legacy mindsets that we've been kind of holding on to for a very long time. So I'm going to allow you guys to scan that, and we're going to multitask. We only have 45 minutes here, so I won't pause for you to type in the answers, but I should have this set up as well where you can also vote up other people's answers. So if you see something you like, feel free to kind of upvote that, and then we'll reflect on that after a few slides. I should take a picture of everybody getting the QR codes and just tell my wife, look how many people like me. They just want to take my picture. Just wait till Christmas. We're going to have so many cards. All right, everybody good? Great. All right, so one of the things we have learned, has anybody seen this pattern, that path of agile transformation destruction? I've seen this in a lot of places. We have this top-down approach. We need to get everybody agile. We're going to agile you. And there was a lot of destruction that happened along the way, because in many cases, they were leveraging traditional hierarchy models. These are the people with power, do what they say, and unfortunately, you end up seeing people, you see teams destroyed, you see productivity destroyed, you see teams, people getting fired. It's kind of hard to, it's hard for people to buy in when you inflict so much pain on them and blame as well. And as I said, this is a gross overrepresentation of how bad it is, but the truth is, there have been a lot of people, like we mentioned, who are out of work now. There are people who had been in their jobs for a long time that were forced out because they weren't playing ball. We've got coaches and technical folks who have been making a lot of investments into teams, and all of a sudden those contracts are gone. People can't find work. One of my friends was out of work for 10 months out of 12. Sole income for a family of 4. His kids were 3 and 1. You know, the effects of this have been very difficult for a lot of people. Agile started off as a tool. And Ani DeFranco is one of my favorite artists. This quote has been in my head for such a long time. Another quote I got from Ani, force is the weapon of the weak. So you see people using these weapons, and oftentimes that weapon is force. So we've learned that you can't take people and cultures and try to force them to change. That hasn't been very effective. So I don't care if you want to kick hockey pucks into a basketball net, just don't call it cricket. Remember what I mentioned earlier about how it was really nice in the early days when somebody said, what's this Scrum all about? Now everybody knows. Everybody knows Scrum. Everybody knows that when you're done developing your story, you put in a testing story so you can do your TDD. We've gotten to a point where the words don't really mean anything anymore. I used to listen to what people say and believe them. And then when I would pay attention closer, I realized, oh no, that's not what we're talking about at all. Test-driven development means the test drives the work. If you're writing unit tests, that's fine. It's just not TDD. And there are so many other things that we've seen where people have a very strong belief in something, But it's usually that belief has come from kind of that derivative works, right? They learn Agile from somebody else who learned it from somebody who learned from somebody. And oftentimes you start diluting terms to match what you understand in the world. You know? This is the Hiroshima Memorial. We're kind of at a point now where we should kind of reflect, know better, do better. And now I'd like to kind of hear from folks on what are some of their experiences. Let's see if I can get this one moved over here. All right, so what are some of the things that we've seen here? Drop-down approach to solutions, stakeholders are not involved. A lot of guessing, I like that. Teams don't practice their values and principles. I like that, we'll come back to that one soon. Oh, standardized process. Very good. Calling processes by the new name. Power structures. That is one of the things that I liked about Scrum is if a team is trying to do something in 2 weeks, it makes problems visible. And that feels really bad because now we have to address the problem earlier instead of waiting 2 years. And sometimes those power structures end up being an issue. And because it feels uncomfortable, it must be wrong, so therefore Scrum is wrong. Assume more upfront planning. Yeah, if only we planned a little bit more. I did hear a quote some years ago that science advances one funeral at a time. Which is really something to speak about change in general. Change is hard, and sometimes people might have a hard time. Yes, ma'am.
We're having challenges trying to match up less agile financial processes.
Oh.
Like more commitment to scope, taking give you the investment for the team, you know.
And that can't be changed, correct? Because that's how they do it, and it's going to stay that way?
They blame compliance and auditing and this and that.
I worked for a government agency for a bit, and if they hire a vendor and the vendor screws up, they want to make sure that they don't get blamed. So they have more contracts, because if something goes really bad, the people who are responsible for those contracts have to answer to it in front of the legislator. So a $5 million contract carries a lot of risk. And we were slowly making progress to say, well, what if you had 5 $1 million projects or 10 $500,000 contracts? You know, like we can work with that. We can break the contract down. I mean, why don't we just get 2 vendors? This idea didn't go over too well. I said, what if we just get the top 2 vendors and we each give them $1 million and see what happens? And then we switch over to the one that's actually working better because we know we're going to lose money anyways. This is government, it always happens. They weren't ready for that one yet. All right, so one of the framings that I had a very generic framing here, and I think if you reflect back on some of the things that you saw, you may see that a lot of the comments might revolve around people, process, and tools. And that's when it's an old framing, but I kind of like it because I think it definitely helps to organize things a little bit. The thing that people care about, especially the leadership and the customers, are the results, the outcomes. But usually that's kind of a component of the people, the culture, psychological safety, how people feel, what they think that they can do. The process, usually if there's a problem, we just add more process because, you know, if you have the process, then things will just automatically happen. And then the tools, a lot of times we'll see people really focus on the tools heavily. We've got Jira, we're Agile. Some people might talk about these values and principles, but I heard from you as well that in some cases that foundation might have been a little bit weak, where we're not really sure why we're doing it. And assumptions play such a huge part in all the decisions we make. Like I said, going back to Taylorism 100 years ago, we assume that local optimization is the best thing. Our goal is to be efficient. I can't tell you how many times I hear the word efficient, but I don't hear the word effective. and that standardization, that top-down model, we get a lot of people who are viewing this from different angles. Melissa mentioned this in her keynote again. All the different ingredients for the food, they have to work together. So you have somebody who might just be recognizing that the tusk is a spear, somebody else recognizes that a snake. You do have a lot of different views in there. And people sometimes, again, it's easier when you make your world smaller. You focus on that one thing, you locally optimize, and you assume that changes to the people, changes to the process, changes to the tool are going to have a bigger impact. When all you have is a hammer, what do you think the song needs more of? Obviously. Digging into the principles, though, I'm sure a lot of us have seen the customer collaboration over contract negotiation slide of the manifesto. But this is one that really is interesting to me, because when they got together and they talked about what is the foundation here, we want to build projects around motivated individuals. This stuff works if you have motivated individuals. Does anybody have somebody on their team who's not a motivated individual? Going back to that previous slide, in many cases, we're finding locations where the foundation is shaky. How will tools and process improve us if we don't have motivated individuals? This quote popped into my head when I was working with some teams. And I realized that some people don't want to do anything else except whatever they're told, because it relieves them of pressure. It absolves them of blame. I worked with the Scrum Master, and I was trying to kind of instill some of these things, like this is what empowered teams mean. Here are the things that you're looking for. It's the shape of the solution. And they asked me, what do you want me to do? And what I didn't say is I want you to effing think. But I didn't say that. So instead, I made some smaller changes that helped the person through. But I learned that I was trying to help people that simply did not want to be helped. And it was like putting lipstick on a pig. It's annoying for the pig, and it's frustrating for me as well. So you find, let's avoid that. Matt Barkham is not in here. Matt Barkham has been creating something called the keyforces.org. So I've kind of been changing scope a little bit here. It's talking about some very low-level scope, individual types of things. This is a bigger picture. So Matt has been creating this, and he's been talking about the different kind of forces that exist within an organization. This also goes back to that elephant picture. In many cases, we may be focusing in some different areas, mechanisms. So we might be optimizing one part of the system, but many other aspects of it are not being addressed. Maybe structure, maybe we go through some reorgs where we find that having a DevOps team and a UI team and a backend team isn't working. But in some cases, we've got funding arms which are static. This is how the budget is, and you have to work around that. So there's a lot of different things. The way we act, developing our capabilities, individual skills, and leadership. There's a lot of different perspectives to kind of look at this to try to say, what are some of the problems and why have we seen a lot of these failures where many companies have just said, we're closing our wallet. So again, now that we're in that second phase of saying, all right, we've reflected on some of the bad, let's start kind of looking at the good. I'd like for you to share a little bit about what you have learned, which is effective in influencing others. Despite just having Jira expertise or knowing story maps very well, or being an expert in cloud architecture, what are some of the things that you have found that can help the system around you, the people around you a little bit more? All right, so we're at that phase now. Agile's blown up. How do we return from here? First off, I'm saying this because I've seen it. It's not about you. I've seen a lot of people go into organizations and they were very experienced practitioners. We had a supply-demand problem for a while. When the board of directors were asking companies, are you agile yet? Those companies went to hire a lot of coaches. Those agencies needed to find people. They often found practitioners, people who were good at being a scrum master, a product owner, or developer, and brought them in. And that's where we saw some of that pain. They knew how to do their job. They tried to just get you to the result, and they wanted to see you successful because that was a medal of honor for them. I transferred in this team, I made that team the best, I made that team the best. It was selfish in some ways. First thing is, it's not about you, and it's not about Agile. If I say Smurf berries, does that make the breakfast taste any better? They are pretty good. I try not to use the word Agile anymore. When people ask me, why do we do things? I don't say, it's Agile development, it's Agile teams, it's Agile planning. I avoid that word. It has become tainted. Going back to the hockey puck comment, right? People have been using that so much, and they have been saying, you have to do this because it's Agile. This is the way. And now the board of directors aren't asking if teams are Agile anymore. They don't care. So I would say the first step is quit selling something as Agile.
It's a paradigm shift, huh?
The paradigm shift, yep. The motivations.
A term that got overused and everybody stopped saying it.
Paradigms. I remember that. The paradigms. I and some of my colleagues have been trying to avoid this. Instead of using that word, which doesn't mean anything anymore, maybe we stop selling Agile. Maybe we start planting some seeds, right? Find out what people really want. And again, with the way that the market has changed right now, you might not be able to just come in with an Agile transformation and force your will upon people. You might actually have to do the hard work right now. Planting those seeds can take a lot of different ways, a lot of forms. For example, the company I'm at right now, we introduced a book club. I introduced Esther Derby's book charters, which is a really easy way to have a book club. You take a book, you assign one person per chapter, and each week, or we do it twice a week, one person will give a one-page summary on what that chapter is about. You might not have to read the book. Lower the barrier to entry. Somebody comes in, they talk about the chapter. If you want to be passive and just show up for a half hour, good enough. If you like what you're hearing, if you've read a chapter and want to read more, cool, right? That seed has been planted, but you lower that barrier to entry. Code katas. Get people together, start having some katas. Have one-on-ones with folks. Start talking to them about what are some of the challenges that they're facing. You have to meet the people where they're at. I know that this is an overused term, but there's a reason that my personal mantra is understand to be understood. I strive for that every day. And sometimes you have to focus very closely on what their problems are. They don't care that Agile is the answer. What they care about is they can't meet their sprint commitments because they have all these other problems that keep popping up. The website keeps crashing, they keep getting errors in production, the pipeline keeps breaking, they have all these other things because they haven't paid attention to some fundamentals, and now they can't get their stuff done. Those are the problems that people have and that need to be addressed. You might have a lot of knowledge and experience, but you should use that to give direction and not set a destination. When you hear where somebody's at, you may have been on a team that didn't have those problems because you automated everything. That's fine. They don't care about your experience. They care about their pain today. So what can you do to solve that problem? And we're probably at that stage, we're just going to all have to get back to work. You know, if you've been a Scrum Master and you've enjoyed pontificating, great. We still have conferences for you to come and hear yourself talk. In organizations, that may not happen as much. If you were a technical coach, you might have to get back into software development. And you're going to focus on those problems. And you're going to recognize the solutions for them, and you might just have to do them yourself. You might have to set up the pipeline to make sure that the tests are run every time code is committed. And then you might need to get additional people with you to start adding to that. You're going to have to build that culture. You might need to have the one-on-one conversation with your product owner, your scrum master, to make sure you really understand what they're doing, and then start doing some of the things that you would recommend, and then see if they can build up on that. Has anybody heard of the stone soup story? One person? Yeah, I love it. Guy comes into a village, he's hungry, nobody will talk to him. Can I get some food? Nope, nobody. All right, can I make some stone soup? He's got their curiosity. Well, what do you need for that? I need a fire, a pot, and some water. Oh, and a stone. So they're like, well, sure, you can have a... So he gets his water boiling and drops the stone in it, and the people say, is that it? Yeah, stone soup and done. But it'd be better with potatoes. I got potatoes. So somebody throws some potatoes in there. Oh, and some celery. Maybe little spices, some tomatoes, a little arugula. And they have a chicken. Everybody starts to contribute. The last step is you pull out the stone and everybody enjoys the soup. That might be the approach that we're going to have to take again. This is how Agile started. We started with stone soup. Until other companies became very effective with it and then everybody wanted it, we kind of took a grassroots effort and tried to see how much could we do ourselves and get away with it before we got in trouble. And the truth is, as long as we were working, they didn't care. Right? As long as compliance was happy that you weren't breaking the rules, the process could get ignored. I worked at a company and nobody wanted to do anything because they say, yeah, but Lisa in release, she has to approve all of them. I had office hours one day and Lisa came in and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. She goes, what's this Agile stuff all about? And we talked and she goes, I love it. She goes, I hate approving all those requests. We know who the good teams are. We let them slide through anyways. We have to go through the formal process. And she said, if anybody says I can't do this because of me, tell them I said they're wrong. That's when I learned about the motivated individuals. Some people didn't care. They liked having the excuse that they can only release every 3 months. I'm like, okay, well, at least I understand the landscape now. There's other things you can do too. You can make it visible, right? If you've got DevOps issues or if you've got tech debt issues, set up a prefactoring story column. Before you grab your work, have a prefactoring column. Put it in there, and then move it into your implementation phase. You'll be able to create a CFD diagram which shows this is how much time it took us to make the change before, and now this is how much time we spent prefactoring and then making the actual change. Make the change easy, then make the easy change. I've seen teams that have done this, and it's actually been really neat because over time, their code quality increases, it's quicker to make changes, and that purple area is the stuff that's deployed. Overall, it ends up going up. People usually think, I have to get approval to do tech debt stories, blah, blah, blah. No, just do it. Take it, let them see the results, and see if they have a problem. Thank you. If you... No, that didn't work. All right, I do have business cards up here. If you want to contact me and get the slides, I think Agile and Beyond will release them as well. And I did record this, so if you wanted to watch it again, thank you. So thank you.